Hi, my name is Samantha Russo, and this video is created as a debunking myth assignment for the EDGR 534 course at Concordia University. For this assignment, I was thinking of myths that I thought to be true and always learned throughout my college education. The one myth that right away came to my mind was the idea of learning styles. I am focusing on the idea that students can learn better and be more successful when teachers ensure that the lesson accommodates students of all learning styles. Well, what are learning styles? They are the idea that people have a certain learning preference, and therefore, instruction should meet the preference of all of the students in order to better the students' learning abilities. And this can be found in Cooper-Tett's 2017. Well, there are many different types of learning styles. One of them is auditory learning. This is for those learners who learn best through the use of hearing while instruction is happening. They learn information better when it is through sound and speech. For example, they may be good at explaining ideas aloud. They may be able to produce a final project through an oral report or a class presentation. They might learn best when a teacher teaches them new content through them verbally explaining it and they're hearing it, and they are able to work through complex problems by talking aloud. And this can all be found according to Fleming 2018. An example that I find to use in my classroom is a lot is letting these auditory learners listen to the books rather than first read them. Another learning style is visual. These learners learn and process information best when they see it in front of them. They may prefer to look at charts or illustrations to help them learn this new content. They also are able to produce learning through the use of visual displays and may even enjoy writing or doing art, according to Fleming, 2018. The last type of learning style is kinesthetic learning. They process the information best when they are physically engaged in the learning process. These learners like hands-on tasks where they can explore their learning, such as through the use of science experiments or when you're doing a math lesson, letting them use the manipulatives or the counters or the blocks or the 10 frames, whatever you have for them. They also, since they like to learn through the use of doing, they may be good at sports and have high levels of energy, according to Fleming, 2018. So now, if there's so many different learning styles and children learn differently, what's the issue? Well, it actually turns out that this common idea that students learn better when it is tailored to their preferred learning style actually is not supported by any evidence, according to Jarrett 2018. Therefore, even though we feel like we are learning more if we are taught using our preferred learning style, we really haven't. Okay, well then why do we believe in teaching to learning styles if there's no evidence supporting it? Well, according to Daniel Willingham, who is a professor of psychology at the University of West Virginia, the learning style theories was very popular in the 1950s, but it started to die out once psychologists realized that they could not replicate it. And this can be found in Anderson 2016. However, in the 1970s, researchers thought it could be beneficial to use this when teaching children with learning disabilities because it can help them better produce learning. However, that didn't turn out to be true either, according to Anderson 2016. Also, in this same article, Willingham states that the most conclusive research done in 2008 does not even say that learning styles are wrong to teach to. But there's just no evidence behind the use of it. So in other words, it's not wrong if you're teaching to it, but there's no evidence backing this method of instruction. Well, you might say, well, if there's no evidence supporting it, then why even is there this myth and why does it continue to be true? Well, according to Marship 2015, learning styles are so common that most individuals never even think twice about it. But as educators, we can't just continue to listen to what we believe is commonly known and widespread. We should be doing our research to see if there is evidence to support our teaching methods. Just because something is believed by many, that doesn't necessarily believe it to be true and effective. Now, I can say I fell for this myth. I have just recently graduated from St. Joseph's College in my undergrad study for majoring in early childhood and childhood education, and this was one of the main things I learned to differentiate according to the students' learning styles. So to me, this was a really big eye-opener. Further, Dr. Phil Newton of Swansea University put himself in the position of an educator to try to understand this issue of learning styles. He wondered, well, what the results would be if you research some major databases such as PubMed or ERIC for information about these learning styles. And this was all found in Singao 2015. Well, it turned out that the results were not so positive. Out of the 109 papers that he came upon during his search, the majority, which was 94%, of the research papers began with a positive perspective learning styles, regardless of the above-mentioned research that discredits the use. Further, 89% directly recommend the use of learning styles in higher education. He concluded this may be due to the fact that it is such a positive seeming concept, but there is still no evidence to prove it, or not enough evidence to prove it. This study shows that an educator or a student like us who uses reliable sources to do their research on, like ERIC or PubMed, we can still come to a false conclusion. Thus, why this myth is continuing to be so persistent. Another study was done by Pashler, McDaniel, Rohr, and Borick in 2009, in which they wanted to see if learning styles practices was also backed by enough evidence. Students were grouped based off their preferred learning styles. They were given random instructional methods, and they were all assessed in the same way. It was found that there was no evidence that a person's preferred learning style helped them learn best at all. Now, you might say, well, what is the big deal? And why does this even matter then if there's not enough evidence? Well, teaching to the learning styles of the students, it's not very easy. It requires a lot of preparation and ensuring that all three learning styles are met in each lesson and is accommodated for every student. If this is indeed a myth, then honestly, it's a waste of time and resources, and we could be using our time to better differentiate our lessons according to their abilities and any accommodations or modifications these special needs students have, rather than solely spending time to differentiate according to their learning styles. Another reason is that by labeling these students as a particular learning style, it can be dangerous. It can prevent them from trying to learn through another style that actually may even be more beneficial to them. In fact, maybe they actually are a little bit of all three types of styles. And it's always good to use visual sounds and explore your learning throughout your education, rather than just sticking to one specific type of style. I found a statement that was made in Singao 2015 that to me seemed very meaningful to help us teachers. Especially as teachers, since we have many responsibilities and jobs, I found this to be very important. And it was said that the key for teachers is not to match the content to the students' learning styles, which would require us to have to do 3 different ways of teaching for every unit of content. Instead, teachers should match the content to create meaning for most of the students, since we know we can't be able to meet the needs of every single student, which is where the differentiation comes into play. Well, if we're not going to teach to their learning styles, what exactly should we be doing instead? Well, in Carey's book, How We Learn, he outlines many different variables that can make a learning successful through the use of various teaching strategies. One of these techniques that can lead to student success is interleaved practice, and this is the idea that students mix skills and concepts of multiple subjects while they're studying to better improve their learning. Another one of these strategies that we can use instead of learning styles is to utilize practice tests and pre-tests. Pre-tests introduce students to key terms and concepts before it is even learned, and when they're seeing the correct answer, it can help them better learn the content when they now are going to learn it and then retake the final test. The practice tests are not just a tool to measure their achievement. It's also a tool that enables teachers to see what students know and do not know, how to group them, and what to reteach or spend more time on based off of how well they did and what questions the majority of the students got right and what the majority of the students got wrong. It alters what we remember and changes how we organize information in our minds. These tests also can help us alleviate anxiety and help retain information, according to Carey, 2014. Another strategy is distributive learning. If we space out our learning using the spacing technique, it was said that it can almost double the amount of technique that we remember later on, rather than just learning it all in one sitting. There were also other studies that were mentioned in Carey's How We Learn. There was one study in which a researcher had her test subjects somewhere interrupted and unable to finish a task, and it was found that they remembered it better than those who were not interrupted. It was also found that we can maximize memory if they were interrupted at the exact moment they were most absorbed in their work. This is another technique we can use. Also, another study was conducted in which the participants in the study that were in a fixed location and some were in a varied location. Those who studied in a varied location did 40% better than those who studied in a fixed location. So if there's all these different techniques that are found to be effective through research and are found to meet the needs of the vast majority of learners, then these are the techniques that we should be using as educators, not ones that we feel do not have enough evidence to support it, like learning styles. Personally, I feel that if we are always allowing students to stick to their learning style, they will never be able to successfully learn using a different method. If they have a different teacher, or as they progress into college, that they're not always going to be able to have learning tailored to their style. They have to be able to learn using the majority of all different types of learning styles. They need to be able to adapt to these learning styles. For example, if a student is an auditory learner and we're always letting them listen to a book instead of reading it, well then how are they going to better their decoding and their fluency skills? Maybe we can allow them to listen to it first to help build on their preference, but then give them the opportunity to still have to read the book after, so they have the visual and the auditory learning both being involved in. I find that to be something that I do a lot in my classroom. And now, after researching and realizing this about learning styles, I will now continue to use evidence-based instruction that we've learned through Carey 2014 How We Learn to better instruction in my classroom. Thank you.